I'm Julie Fei Fan Balzer, and you'll see that stencils play an important role in today's episode. So first, I'm using framed paper for jewelry. So that's right, this jewelry is made from paper, but the paper's completely protected because it's under a piece of glass. So this really opens up the possibilities of what you can use. Now, normally you wouldn't want to use something like watercolor for jewelry, but we're gonna be able to do it today. So to get started, I'm gonna show you a couple different techniques. I have a piece of watercolor paper. It's important to use something that's absorbent, and I am going to spray my paper. You can see I'm using watercolor powder, and you can see I already got some accidentally on there, which is fine. Then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take a stencil, and it's okay that the stencil is smaller than the paper. The water kind of makes it stick to it, which is nice. Then I have these little watercolor powders, and I'm just gonna sprinkle them. And you can see as they start to spread. Now, the impulse, and trust me because I've had it, is to use every single color because it's fun. But your best bet is to stick to 2 or 3 colors so that you don't get something that's really muddy and kind of brown. But you know, as I always say, you learn more from mistakes than not, so experiment and see what you like. And you'll see that when I pull the stencil off, there's a watery version of it left behind, but I'm missing a lot of the stencil. No worries, here's what I'm gonna do now. I'm gonna take this wet stencil, you can see all that inky goodness on it, and I'm going to take it and I'm gonna press it to a new sheet of paper. I'm gonna take another piece of paper and sandwich it over it and just rub. And now you can see that I have a delicious little print, okay? Very cool, right? But there's another way that you can work with stencils. So let me get a clean stencil so that I can show you how this is going to work, which is you can also take your paper, let's flip it over, then it's like a new piece of paper. Put your stencil down, and you can sprinkle your powders first. Now, again, it may look like you don't have much there, but a little bit of powder goes very far. I tend to be heavy-handed with it because I really like color, but you know, learn from my mistakes and be a little lighter maybe with what you're doing. But again, I'm gonna try to stick to maybe 3 colors. I just wanna make sure that every area has something in here. Now, another important thing is notice how I'm tapping the bottle. I'm not squeezing it. If you squeeze it, your entire workspace will be covered in watercolor powder, and ask me how I know that. Then I'm gonna take this spray bottle and I'm gonna spritz across the top. And when I pull it off, again, I should have a version of the stencil design in a kind of watery look right there. And I'm gonna do the same trick now where I take my paper, I flip it over, I can take another piece of paper, smush it down, okay? And I will have the reverse, actually, twice, if you can see that right there. So I have this now patterned twice. Now we're working on smaller pieces of watercolor paper here, but that doesn't mean that you have to use the smaller stencils. In fact, sometimes it's nice to have that really big open design. So let me grab some more paper. And this time I'm gonna take a much bigger stencil. This is a 12 by 12 stencil. And I'm gonna put that right down on there. And again, you can use any of the methods that we've used so far to get this. So you can also, you know, I was doing random where I was kind of letting the color go everywhere. But if I wanna just do like bands of color, I can do that too. So I can keep my colors pretty separate into these kinds of bands of color, which is another fun way to work with this. I love that there are so many different ways to mix your media and to play with it. So once I have done that, I'm gonna go ahead and spritz this. The less water you use, the kind of more mottled effect you get, but you see the stencil a little bit better. The more water you use, the more of this kind of effect that you get. And again, I can this time, because it's a big stencil, take my paper and press it directly onto the stencil to get that nice reverse print, which I always think is really cool. So here you go. You have they look very similar, right? But it's actually one is negative and one is positive. So I would take a moment and I would let all of this dry. So I have some here. that are already dry. And you can see I used a variety of different stencils. Some of them, the stencils are very crisp, some very light colored. Others, you know, the stencil got very blurred, like this one, and that's also totally great. Now what I have is little metal frames here, and these frames I'm now going to audition various things so I can look through them and see, oh, this would be nice, or oh, look at how cool these purple dots are, whatever it is. And when I find what I like, then I'm just gonna take a regular old pencil, you could also use a pen, whatever you want, and I'm basically gonna trace the frame like so. Now, I know that my tracing line is slightly outside, so I'm going to cut slightly inside to make it smaller so that it fits inside that frame. And then I want to go ahead and double check the fit. So there's a little lever over on the side here that you open, pull it open, and I can slot this in to see if it's going to fit. It looks like it's a little wide on one side, so I'm just gonna trim. This doesn't have to be exact. One of the nice things about the frame is it gives you a little bit of leeway, but that looks like it's good. So now I have a piece of glass here that is perfectly fit to the same size. In fact, I have two pieces. So all I'm gonna do is sandwich the paper between the two pieces of glass. You could put another piece here to make it double-sided if you wanted. I'm gonna slide this into the frame, close this up, just like so. And then you can see all I did here is I put this onto a rubber necklace and I added some really beautiful ribbon with a couple of beads down at the bottom. And if we look at the other variations, you can keep the ribbon, you cannot keep the ribbon. It's totally up to you. But yes, you can take your paper crafts and you can turn them into absolutely wearable jewelry.